I'm Kate.
I'm Elle.
And we are down to Faye.
Happy Christmas, Harry.
Happy Christmas, Ron.
Happy Christmas, everybody. We're continuing our Throne of Glass deep dive today with chapters 41 to 49. But first, do you have a book review?
I feel bad for not calling it a book rec, but I also want to be honest. Like, I don't want to always give positive book recommendations and then you guys read it and be like, oh, wait a minute, they have terrible taste.
You lied to us.
You lied to us. And I don't hate Phantasma by Kaylie Smith. I just didn't really vibe with it. And I tried, y'all. I read the whole thing. Elle didn't even finish it. I at least didn't DNF it.
I got 3/4 of the way, but
I can't believe you made it that far and didn't finish it. I can't DNF a book. We've talked about that. And we've talked about also, I should have loved this. Like a couple weeks ago, I was talking about the vibes. We have spooky New Orleans paranormal vibes, a competition, mystery, demons, devils, ghosts who fuck.
I mean, it's literally all of your favorite
all
teams.
All my favorite things. And I just could not connect with the characters. And it's maybe at least partly due to me listening to the audiobook versus reading. My mind wanders and I'll be listening and then all of a sudden I'll be like, wait a minute, I didn't
when did that
process
happen?
anything that just happened. And this isn't criticism of the narrator, but a woman doing a male voice just doesn't do it for me. It doesn't, like I said last week, make my undercarriage rumble. And also the MMC's name Blackwell, whenever it would be like sexy scenes and she would Blackwell, it made me want to take my AirPods out and throw them across the room.
It just takes you out of the moment.
It does. And it's spicy, which we love, but it's somehow spicy and vanilla. Like it's white family taco night spicy. You know? Does that make sense?
It's just not quite really much.
No.
Or maybe the Morning Glory milking farm just altered your brain chemistry.
It definitely did. Speaking of just altered brain chemistry and unhinged book recs, I did find a future book rec with vampires that are into period blood. Which I didn't know I was into that until I don't know if we've talked about Hemlock Grove on Netflix.
I don't think we've ever talked about it here.
Okay, because you hated it. I love that show. It has Bill Skarsgård as a vampire and then some other guy as a werewolf.
I didn't hate it. I wanted to like it. I just thought it was kind of hard to follow.
But there was some sexy scenes. Like there's one scene where he is going down on a girl in a bathroom, I think, and she's on her period. And he's a vampire and he's like really into it. So that is a subgenre I didn't know I was into until
it still makes me like a little cringy. Like I'm sure it's hot in the scene. I bet it's hot in the book. It just, my first thought is, I need to test this out.
Well, all that to be said, I'm going to give a quick plot description and share what I liked and what I didn't like. And y'all can decide for yourselves because there are plenty of book talk girlies who loved it. And like, what the fuck do I know? I'm into vampires who are into period blood. Like, I am an unreliable narrator. Don't listen to anything I say. Phantasma is the first book in the Wicked Games series by Kaylie Smith. When Ophelia Grimm and her sister discover their mother has died unexpectedly, Ophelia not only inherits her mother's necromancer gifts, but a shit ton of debt. And that part might have been too relatable. Like maybe I was a little too triggered by that. The sister, by the way, I didn't care if she lived or died.
Yep.
Genevieve. But so Genevieve enters Phantasma, and that is a competition that grants the winner a single wish. Ophelia follows her sister to the cursed mansion that's basically a spirit Halloween store in the middle of New Orleans. And despite her mother her entire life telling her to never make a deal with a devil or demon, she immediately makes one with Blackwell. And I could not stop picturing Danny Phantom for Blackwell.
Yeah.
And I think that's because he's a phantom.
I've already forgotten. Did they describe his hair as white too?
Yes, exactly.
It kind of makes sense.
Yes. And he helps what they call guide. I'm going to say cheat.
Yeah, she gets to avoid all the bad stuff.
All the bad
she doesn't really have to do anything.
And then she's not really empathetic, but we'll get there. So he helps guide her through the levels of the game, which are based on the 9 circles of hell. But another one of my criticisms is the games didn't reflect the sins very well. At least that's one part I feel like could have been better. And I'm going to say, if you're going to look for something like this that I did like, Kingdom of the Wicked, not that it was a competition, but just the depiction of hell and the different sins and the dark romance vibes. I really, really like that.
Yeah, that made more sense.
And I'll just say, I'm not going to say what happened on the lust level, but I thought it was a disappointment.
I think I could see if she was trying to be, like, creative and different with it, but I was like, "This is not the time."
No. And I just wasn't able to picture the games as she was describing them because it was like, they're chained over here, and then there's columns, and then the other people are over here, and I couldn't picture of it, which again could have been because I was listening instead of reading.
No, I know what you mean, though, because speaking of the lust level, it's like she was changing location, and then she would describe
Yes.
where she was, and I was like, "Wait, did you
Where are
walk over
we?
there? Like, what just
Yeah.
happened?"
Where there were, like, a bunch of beds everywhere, but I thought we were in, yeah, it was
It's
a little hard
confusing.
to follow, but I wanna start with I say start with, I've started. I wanna say what I did like. I like the paranormal gothic New Orleans vibe because I love New Orleans, and I wouldn't necessarily call it a dark romance.
Mm-mm.
I did love the FMC being a necromancer, which is a nice change of pace. We read so many fae, vampire, and witch books.
Mhm.
And I thought the representation of OCD was interesting because I'm glad it didn't end up being something that she could just beat or overcome, which is not how mental illness works.
Yeah, it just was a part of her, which was nice to include it as not being a good or bad thing, it just was part of her.
Yeah, and I didn't hate the FMC. I just wasn't invested. Like, I didn't care if she won or if she lived or died, which is not good. And I
Yeah.
shouldn't compare everything to ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, but this was no Feyre Under the Mountain or Selena in the King's Tournament. It was not high stakes because at no point did I feel like she was actually in danger.
Yeah.
And if, like I'm saying, if you want this kind of vibe, even what is the other book series I was talking about? Caraval?
Oh,
Caraval?
Caraval.
That series does this a little bit better. But the insta love too, it was just too much. Like a few days from the first page to the last page, it's meeting and falling in love. And of course, falling in love is forbidden and there's a curse. I also got tired of being in the mansion. Like it got a little claustrophobic.
It just there were so many things that should be happening to her, and she would see it happen to others, and then they
Mhm.
weren't happening, and you were just kinda like, what's going
What's
on right now?" Like,
happening?
you've gotten to miss each of these horror events, and you're just, like, walking the hall, so you kinda get lost a little bit.
Right. That's yeah, it was I at no point did I understand what was going on, honestly, and I couldn't like I said, I couldn't picture the trials. I have a very good imagination, like, the fanfic that I'm writing in my head on a daily basis proves that I have the imagination.
Absolutely.
And Ophelia would witness something heinous, nothing happening to her, of course, but she would witness terrible things happen to other people, and then the next paragraph is smut. Like, no trauma, no processing,
No
like,
empathy.
no empathy. Elle and I are two girls who overthink and overanalyze everything, so I just couldn't really relate to that. She's also terrible Ophelia is also terrible at following instructions, and she has major attitude towards the other contestants. The will they, won't they is one chapter, she would be like, "We can't!" And then it would do a 180, and he was like, "We can't!" And then they just traded that off every chapter. Every single like, they switch positions every
But they
chapter,
still do, so, like,
but they still
okay.
do. Yeah, exactly. And the twist, I did like the ending and I liked the twist. It was predictable, but I thought it was good. There's spice, but I didn't find it particularly hot, and at no point did it seem like they got to know each other or talked. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Are you guys in love?" And there's just I don't know. I feel bad for being negative. I hate being negative. Well, I love being negative. But about, because like, what do I know? I've never written a book, but there's something about the plot that just didn't flow or connect for me personally, and that's in my unsolicited opinion. So, I don't regret reading it, and there were parts of the story I really enjoyed. Even I saw it coming a million miles away, but again, I did like the ending. And the next book is about the sister Genevieve, who I really didn't care for. So just cut to me in April talking about how I'm reading it anyway.
Hating it, but still
I'll be like,
pushing
anyway,
through.
so I'm reading the second book. But yeah, I don't want to dissuade anybody from reading it. That's just my unsolicited opinion.
It's kind of hard, though, because it's everywhere, and everybody's like, "Oh, you'll love
Yes,
this."
I
So,
was
like,
very
you want
surprised.
to. It's actually my book review, because I'm also gonna give a review
Yeah,
next week,
you are also reading.
is
So
a
I'm
similar situation. I feel Book Talk did not lie to me, but I had high expectations, and I just don't love it, and I think I'd like to be honest with you guys. I don't
yeah.
wanna ever, like, be cruel towards an author or
Yeah,
disrespectful or
exactly.
anything, but, sometimes things just don't flow or, like, you're not getting the point, and if this is my honest opinion, I'm gonna tell you guys how it was for me. You may still wanna read it, you still may like the vibes.
And what are you currently what is it? Because it's also gothic spooky vibes.
It's Anathema by Carrie Lake. It's
Okay.
like, you
Which
guys
is
have
also everywhere on Book
you've
Talk.
probably seen the cover. It's like a girl with dark hair and a black dress from behind, and there's, like, spooky woods in front of her.
Mhm.
They're literally called the Eating Woods. kind of wild. So I'll tell you guys more about that one next week.
Okay.
We jump ahead 2 weeks in Heir of Fire, and in those 2 weeks, Selena has spent the mornings and evenings in the kitchens and her days training with Rowan.
No unexpected forest fires or
Whew.
run in with literal nightmares. But just as horrifying to Selena, all of this time exploring her magic, she has yet to find her power bottom.
Hmm.
Because Adian's not
As you
there.
said that, I was like, Adian, where are you? It's the small things that are actually the hardest for her, like lighting Rowan's endless supply of Bath and Body Works candles. Rowan makes her practice every day at various ruins, so if she does lose control, they don't piss Smokey the Bear off.
On the surface, not a lot has changed, but Selena and Rowan are actually talking. Because after she opened up about Adian and why she doesn't want the throne, she decided talking was good. But also, she hasn't been able to talk openly in a full decade, so she probably has a lot to say.
Yeah, well,
Like, that's a long time to keep shit in.
there's so many times when she gave half truths or like as somebody else, she's actually telling the truth, but it's never been just like, this is me. This is how I truly feel
Right.
about something. She's not totally open with Rowan, and he's obviously not totally open with her, but she's managed to get him to talk about campaigns and adventures that he's had all over Aurelia. Selena envies his long life and all the places that he's seen, but she picks up on the undercurrent of rage and grief.
The more she listens, the more she hates Maeve. And the more that hate and resentment grow, the more stories that she's asking Emrys for.
And Rowan doesn't stop Emrys from sharing those stories.
Interesting. They've gotten into such a rhythm that Beltane sneaks up on Selena, and that brings her crashing back to reality because it's already spring in Otterland, and she's so far, in her mind, from being able to enter Doranel. And she's trying to save the world. We keep forgetting that.
There's so much anxiety because she needs time to train, and it takes time that she doesn't have. There's feasting and dancing and celebrating for the holiday in Winland, but in Otterland, the king pretty much just allows maypoles with no hints of magic.
Kind of like, and this isn't criticism or anything, but when Christians took over holidays, they would incorporate parts of other holidays and religions and celebrations, but they would switch the focus to baby Jesus away in a manger, no crib for a bed.
Yeah, even like we joke about me saying Yulamus or Yulmus, but I mean the Yule log. Now we have a Christmas tree, but eventually, like that's kind of how it transitioned.
One day we're gonna have merch. We're working on stickers, by the way.
Someday I want us to have a cute shirt that says
Yulamus shirt. Happy Yulamus.
I love all kinds of those like silly, like cutesy things. We'll figure it out, guys. It might take a while. We'll figure it out.
Look at your sweater. We know you like silly cutesy things.
I'm covered in sequins. They're sequin nutcrackers. I would say I'm sorry because they're like rainbow colored, but I'm not. It's who I am. As a child in Orant, Selena had loved the bonfires.
Of course.
A night when a girl with fire magic had nothing to hide. As she'd run around setting shit on fire, people called her Aelin Fireheart and Aelin of the Wildfire.
I wonder if they said it like, it's Aelin Fireheart.
They're literally always afraid of her, but this one time it's okay. Like, sure.
As Demi-Fae arrived for the festivities, Selena earns a few head turns, but as soon as the males see Rowan, they find anywhere else to look.
I'd be like, don't worry about him.
Yeah, don't look at him.
She's not the only one that's getting attention. She catches a few females looking at Rowan, and she does not like it. She blames it on being in her Fae form so much, those, territorial Fae instincts taking over.
Sure, Jan.
Right.
Selena's hoping for a chance to relax on Beltane, but instead, Rowan expects her to personally ignite and control the bonfires all night. Not just keep them burning, but he has its specific instructions. He wants the end ones low for the idiots that jump over the fire, and he wants the middle one to be huge.
So it's a lot of concentration.
When she says it's maybe not the best idea to have her in charge, he says he and his wind magic will be with her all night.
At least the healers are there.
Yeah. Thank God. We know how
much... Not the water wielders, but the healers.
Not the water wielders. We know how much Selena loves music, and that extends to her flames, which are moving with the music and turning different colors, which sounds very pretty. Her magic isn't just blue wildfire anymore like we saw with the skinwalkers. It's been changing and growing these past few weeks.
Selena is sweating.
I'd be like, don't look at me.
I mean, not just on the outside, but her blood feels like it's boiling, and she has a knot in her lower back. But Rowan doesn't give a shit. Just like he did with Luca, he's using Selena's fear of hurting other people to control her magic.
And it's working, but she is tired, not just physically, but Selena's never the one that gets to enjoy things. Like, Selena never gets to dance like no one is looking. And it starts with a foot tap, our little white person move, then a head bob. Then she's feeling the fire and music in her bones, like threads binding her to everything. It's very Discovery of Witches, the threads.
Oh, okay, the threads, because I was immediately seeing, like,
Not the
Farrah
foot tap.
dancing for Tamlin, like, doing her moves.
Yeah.
It's like the word marks, she realizes. The word marks are a way of harnessing those threads, weaving and binding the essence of things. Magic can do the same, and from her power, she could create and shape.
And Rowan notices her using the music and he's like, "Go on, girl." Like she did when she was humming on the frozen lake. He tells her to let the music steady her, and she does. But she starts to lose herself in it, first in the music and then in the fire.
And in Rowan's defense, there's no way he could know that this could happen
Yeah,
because it's not like there's a lot of fire users around
right.
with the flames like kind of entrancing. That's not like a common
Well, he
issue with people's
sees her
magic.
using her magic and not being terrified, so he's trying to encourage.
Well, and he knows that the music before has helped to calm her, but he
Right.
doesn't realize that she is giving over
She is
power to
feeling
her
herself.
magic. She's released the reins a little too much. Rowan is panicking. He starts to tell her to stop and look at him with something like fear in his voice, but she can't look away from the flames. She can't even move.
And that's hearing Rowan being scared is scary. Like he does not get scared. And he tells her that if she doesn't stop, she's going to burn out.
Which is surprising to her because they've been looking for the bottom of that well of her magic since she's been here and they haven't found it.
And Rowan apologizes before ripping the air from her lungs. Then she's on the ground, still burning despite the tethers to the flames being severed.
Rowan grabs two healers because unfortunately there aren't any water wielders there. He carries her to a sunken stone tub of water, which she immediately starts boiling, even as he's trying to freeze it.
This is one of our favorite microtropes, just not in this book. Like, we love a sunken tub of water, or like,
That or like the trope of like somebody being taken care of.
yes.
The bath freezes and melts and freezes and melts. Rowan's ice going tit for dick, tit to dick with her fire. The healers tell him to take her clothes off.
I'd be like, actually, I'm feeling much better now. Just let me die. Like, do not fold me up in your arms naked because that is not a good angle. I don't want to be folded.
Nobody
naked.
asked to see that. Shit finally starts to settle down, and the healers leave to get a tonic because even if she's not actively the heat miser right now, I forgot about that movie. She's still in pain. Rowan tells her that if she'd gone any longer, the burnout would have destroyed her, that she needs to learn the signs and how to pull back before something like that happens again.
Yeah, okay, teacher. Let's teach me the signs.
Like, but-
you know that I didn't grow up with anyone teaching me how to use my fire magic.
But also, like, we were just like, he's not as familiar with fire wielders. So he had, I guess, no matter the magic type, he could have still told her not to relinquish her focus to the magic.
Well, the
but-
only time that Selena had access to her magic, she was a child in Terrasen, and the lessons were about suppressing it.
Mhm.
And she's never been close to a burnout. And although what just happened was terrifying, she's almost relieved in this moment because she thinks she found her power bottom. Like, she was relieved 10 years ago when she woke up and magic was gone.
Rowan is surprisingly gentle and seemed scared, not just of the situation, like burning all the demi-fae, but seeing Selena that close to burnout has shaken him. Then he sees the scars on her back from Endovier.
And this is the first time Rowan is hearing she spent a year in the Endovier salt mines. Hearing that, Rowan turns on his heel and leaves. Then we cut to a very upset hawk flying away. Just caw-caw!
After hearing how much time Rowan spent in his animal form after Lyria was murdered, it's not surprising that after seeing Selena's injuries, finally understanding what it's been like for her, his magic starts to take over.
It's not surprising that he shifts into his hawk form when he's really upset, but it is surprising that he's that upset after seeing Selena's scars. Because again, their relationship is changing and evolving, but he hasn't given the impression that he really gives a shit about her.
Well, and we did talk about in the last episode that he's got to stop pushing her down when she's looking for a hand up.
Right. And then and her number one fear is being abandoned, and he sees the scars and just fucks off.
I mean, to be fair, he's running to go yell at Maeve, but the way that the reason she assumes he's leaving, I'm like, even if I was upset, I'm not sure that's the conclusion that I would draw. But like, okay, Rowan is a hundreds-year-old warrior. He's seen a lot of shit and he's seen worse injuries. But when he saw Selena's back, his heart stopped. He felt his magic and instincts taking over, telling him to rip apart the people who'd done that to her. And he barely made it out of the bath before he shifted.
He's not just upset about her back, but Maeve knew about her past and didn't tell him. She knew Selena had been a slave, and Rowan threatened to whip her, for fuck's sake. The Rowan we met was cold and detached, At the beginning of Heir and Fire, he was even cruel at times. He was even cruel a couple chapters ago, but he would have done things differently if he'd had some fucking context. Like, he's not that cruel. He's, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
he still, I think, would have
Maeve
treated
did not
her.
care. She let that one go as it was. She was like, yeah, go on.
And he's thinking about all this he could cause all the way to the Cambrian mountains, but he doesn't keep going to Doranel. One, Maeve's not, she doesn't give a shit. She's not going to give you answers. And she might actually use the blood oath to command that you stay there. And two, Selena finally opened up to him and he turned into a bird and fucked off from a female whose biggest fear is abandonment when people see the real her.
I mean, she literally almost just burned herself out in some fashion. So she is very weak and in need of protection. And you just left her alone.
She's naked and folded.
There's multiple reasons you need to go back. He feels a primal anger and a territorial possessive need, not a need to fucks, unfortunately.
Or that he's willing to admit yet, anyways.
It's a need to protect. So he hits a
Protect
Yui.
that pussy.
Hey. He hits a Yui and flies back to Mistward, where Selena has dragged herself out of the baths and into bed.
She's drained. She's devastated, not just from the magic or Rowan seeing her naked and folded, but her biggest fear came true. Rowan saw her for the first time and, in her mind, abandoned her.
Sometime in the night, her window opens and Rowan flies in, shifts, then picks her up and carries her to his room. He sets her on his bed and tells her she's staying with him from now on.
But don't get too excited. Rowan is as far away as humanly possible on the bed without falling off.
Selena tells him she doesn't want pity, but Rowan doesn't pity her. He's fucking pissed at Maeve for not telling him.
Good.
And he's pissed at himself for how he treated her. Good.
And Selena could have done some damage here. Like, me personally, I would have held this over his head for a very long time. I will be holding this in my bare ass over your head.
He would regret bringing you to
really
his bed.
If we're not fucking, I'd honestly rather not share a bed. Like, my farts aren't cute. I don't want to fart in a bed with Dorian or Rowan. My boyfriend says when I fart that it sounds like someone playing the trumpet underwater. I would just prefer to sleep alone. I mean, I'm okay with sleeping with you because you sleep like a corpse. Like, you don't even know there's anyone else in the bed. But and this is controversial, but I've always slept separately from people I've been in relationships with because I don't like it. And now we have Dorian and Rowan sharing their beds with females. No one's fucking. We don't know if Adian's fucking anyone.
There's so many things to that. Also, you're a light sleeper, so if
I
anybody
wake up
moves
really easily.
like, don't try to tuck me in. Don't try to shift me. I don't like it. It'll ruin your whole night's sleep. So Kate needs to be left alone.
I have to take so many pills to sleep. You have no idea.
Meanwhile, anytime we've traveled, I'm usually exhausted. So I pass out. She's like, okay, you can stay.
I just walk around.
Well, instead of making him feel like shit, Selena takes his hand and explains.
She didn't tell him about Endovir because she was scared she did not tell him about Endovir because she was scared that he would mock her or pity her or assume she was using it as an excuse. And he calls her a good soldier, which is as close as we're getting to good girl right now. And that was another thing with Phantasma, actually. Like, he said good girl a lot. And it would
like
be
good
much. Girl and then Blackwell.
I mean, like, it's sexy during sexy time, but like
sexy time.
Yeah, but like regular time, like, don't just say good girl to me because eventually I'm gonna get a little annoyed.
Clever girl.
Okay, I like that. Okay. Rowan asks how she was sent to Endovir, how she got out, and she doesn't just tell him that. She tells him about her desert side quest, losing Sam, the King's tournament. She tells him all of it, or she tells him most of it. There will be time to talk about word keys and Nehemia and Elena later.
Will there? Something molten rushes through all of her, I'm assuming mostly to her undercarriage, and it pours over every crack, not to hurt, but to forge. And I love that line because I just think Selena sees herself as broken.
Well, and she's been afraid of the fire, so people forget that fire can also cleanse.
You are so deep. And that it can also, forge.
Forge, yeah.
It can be used to help fix what is broken.
All of these things, they're good for her. Rowan doesn't let her get out of bed the next day, bringing her Dinty Moore beef stew and mug after mug of
beef stew.
I was like, I don't know what that is. Dinty Moore beef stew and mug after mug of tea. If she didn't know any better, she'd think he was fussing.
Emerus and Luca try to visit, but Rowan growls and they throw their get well soon cards through the door and run away. But also, it's like Do other people not see what's going on? This is not I know that they say it's because a woman being
Look, they
defenseless
might be
triggers
lying to themselves,
instincts.
but you know that Emerson and Luca were like, "Oh, okay."
Mhm.
Selena's like, "Wow, males go crazy when females almost burn out." And Rowan says it's not just a cultural thing, but instinct to protect females when they're defenseless.
Whatever you have to tell yourself.
She asks if when your magic runs out, it's either stop or burn out, but there is a third option, the Karanom. It's rare, like Rowan has only seen it used a handful of times, but when you're drained, your Karanom can yield their power to you as long as you're compatible and sharing a blood connection.
There's no way of knowing if you're Karen until you try, and people don't usually try because it not just because it's so rare, but you have to really trust the person. Like, they could take too much, they could leave you to burn out, or they could actually force a bond.
Man, they could even like fuck you over, like your brain, like
Uh-huh.
psychologically, like scramble your brain. Maeve outlawed Maeve outlawed forced bonds, but Rowan has seen it a few times when he hunted down Fae who kept their Karanom as slaves.
And this whole forced bond reminds me of the Keystone series by
Oh
Danica
yeah.
Dark because, her maker, the mage, did something like that, right?
Yeah, like they could share their light between mages and he would force that.
Right.
It was like not quite rape, but it was like a rape of her power, I
Yeah.
guess. Moving away from that very dark subject, Selena asks which of Rowan's butt buddies are the cutest and would they fancy her?
Rowan hates the thought of Selena with any of his circle jerk. I have a feeling he hates the thought of her with anyone.
Good.
Even the kitty cat friend, who Rowan says would not know what to do with her. And besides, you're not full fae. You'll be old soon and not worth the time and effort. Is this fucking play about us?
It's aggressive. Looking at her wrists, he comments a healer could probably get rid of her scars. Not in a judgy way, but she hasn't had access to healers with magic for 10 years.
But she doesn't want to forget the slaves that she left behind, the ones that she plans to free one day. Rowan asks what exactly happened 10 years ago, and they may be closer to friends than enemies now, but she isn't ready to talk about that yet. It's not her parents' death. Like, she's talked about that, but there's something else that she has locked away, something we the readers don't even know yet.
It's not the healthiest way to cope, but it's the only reason that she survived Erebin, the reason she survived Endovier and standing before the king. She did those things as Selena. She doesn't know what will happen if she ever becomes Aelin again, and all of that will be unleashed.
Rowan understands. If anyone's going to understand, it's Rowan. But he also thinks that she likes to suffer, that she collects scars because she thinks she deserves them.
Hmm.
It's the same thing he's been doing for over 200 years, that she's hoping to go to hell, 2 L's, because she can't imagine facing everyone in the afterworld. Like, she wants to suffer because she thinks she deserves it.
Rowan lies down beside Selena, not holding her, just lying beside her. He says, "At least if you're going to hell, then we'll be there together," then brushes his large hand down her hair.
I knew his hand would be large. It's such a small touch with a large hand, but Selena hasn't been touched by anyone in so long. After he says he has no doubt that she will free the slaves, it's so sad in retrospect, from the labor camps, no matter what name she uses, she leans into his touch and puts her hand on his chest. And you're like, oh my God, it's happening. And you know what? This scene is so sweet that I don't even mind that her hand doesn't keep sliding down. Like, I'm going to let it, it's fine.
Okay, we're just glad it happened.
I mean, in my mind, it kept sliding down, and the kitty cat friend was there, but whatever.
She spends the next couple of days enjoying someone giving a shit if she lives or dies.
One of those days being her 19th birthday. This girl was 18.
Yeah. Her present, another dead demi-fae.
Rowan reports it's just like the others. It's a corpse drained and dumped. But he brings her back chocolates for her birthday present.
Yay.
And she sneaks up behind him and kisses him on the cheek, which he wipes off. But he doesn't stop it from happening. It's very the grumpy sunshine trope.
Yep. Once she's feeling better, it's right back to training. And Rowan isn't going to take it easy on her. Her magic lacks shape and control, which makes it difficult to fight with. But she does have an advantage over other magic wielders. She already knows how to fight with weapons. He wants her to draw on that and visualize her fire as arrows, daggers, and for her first lesson, shields.
And you know what? Thank God that was the first lesson with what happens next. He starts throwing ice daggers, but her fire shield, if it appears at all, it always manifests too far to the right, to the left. Like, she can't actually control it.
We're working on it. And he doesn't want a wall of fire. He wants a small shield, one that she can control. When she starts acting like she's on the verge
She's
of a
like,
burnout.
oh no, I hope I don't burn out.
I mean, I get it. That would be, after everything that happened,
No,
I
it
would
would
be
be
anxious
scary.
too.
Because she does still think that she found her power bottom.
He tells her that burnout was not because she'd reached the end of her power. That was because she got caught up in the fire and let it consume her.
When she's obviously disappointed she did not find the power of her bottom,
The
he's
power of her bottom?
The power.
She clearly hasn't, because I haven't fucked yet.
The power of her bottom. Anyway, sorry. He's like, I fucking knew you wanted your power to be insignificant. And then he's triggered and throwing dagger after dagger. And eventually she's so pissed that she manages to manifest a perfect shield.
It happens so quick. After weeks of making shields, Selena learns to control multiple defenses at once. Rowan doesn't even have to force her into training anymore. She wakes before dawn and starts practicing on her own.
Chapter 44 opens, and that's actually huge because she hated training, and the fact that she's waking up on her own to do it.
Yeah, she's been very motivated with her magic. She was afraid of it, and now she's getting up early.
Chapter 44 opens on a high note for Manon, even though Abraxos hasn't made the crossing. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Even though Abraxos hasn't made the crossing, the Spider Silk has improved his flying, and he won a battle for dominance against Lynn's wyvern.
Yeah, so there, Lynn. Everything is going...
Take that, Lynn.
Stay in your lane, Lynn. Everything is going great until Manon's grandmother hears they haven't made the crossing yet, meaning Manon can't even participate in the war games that they're training for.
The high bitch rakes her iron nails across her granddaughter's cheeks, which, what the fuck? I mean, my grandmother used to, so I used to get my mouth washed out with soap.
No.
I know, but we didn't have bars of soap. We had liquid soap. So when I tell you, she just
squirting that in there.
She just pumped sun-ripened raspberry soap into my mouth.
Gross. Got it.
So she calls her an embarrassment, rakes her iron nails across her cheek, because she wants Manon to win the games. So not just for the prestige of winning the games, she wants to be queen, not just high witch, but she wants to be both of them to be queens.
Yeah. Well, really, Manon's grandmother. Manon's grandmother, although she's including Manon, she wants to be queen of the wastes.
And I think Ansel will have something to say about that.
Yeah. I love how we just skirt over the fact that there's still a curse that you can't.
You can't even live there.
You can't prance around and call yourself fucking queen. We can't step foot on the land.
Stupid.
Like, it's just silly. She asks if Manon's heart has melted. Obviously, she says no. And her grandmother reinforces that it can't melt because she doesn't have a heart.
They're so stupid. Her grandmother informs her that Iskra, of all people, caught a Kraken witch spying on them, that she's in the dungeons and they've been interrogating her for 2 days.
That gets Manon's attention.
That's surprising. Because they're all living amongst each other and like eating at the same time and practicing.
They all hate the Krakens. I'm surprised it wasn't a big announcement. Like, they're like bragging.
That's
I would
weird.
expect. That gets Manon's attention because she has a major hard-on for the Krakens because they still think that they're the key to undoing the curse.
But they don't actually have a plan. But whatever. The high bitch tells her she's making the crossing tomorrow, even if she splatters on the rocks. So the next day, everyone comes out to watch. Astrid and Sorrel are close, but they're not on their wyverns, which we talked about that being the plan. But her grandmother heard about that being the plan, having Manon jump off if things go south and then one of their wyverns catches her, and she forbade it.
I know we've moved forward, but I'm just thinking, like, the way that they're, like, torturing this Kraken, and they're like, this is the key to fixing the curse.
How? Like, what?
Continuing to torture her is going to fix this? What's wrong? Like,
they did it because you were, like, to punish you for your cruelty, and you think
for not having
being
peace.
Cruel is going to be the key.
Yeah, you guys won the war, so when you won the war, shouldn't that have defeated the point of the curse, if that's your logic? It just doesn't make sense.
I wish we could go in and talk to these witches.
Just every once in a while, I'm like, that's dumb. You guys think for yourselves ever?
The witches and, like, this part of their plot, and then Kayal thinking somehow he's going to save Dorian by releasing magic, even though Dorian's magic is not stifled. You're just, what logic does this
They're like,
make?
we're going to go in and take over the waste. I'm like, the Krakens are not holding.
It's going to die. Like,
the Krakens are not holding the waste. So who are you taking it from?
Yeah.
What do you mean? That doesn't make any sense. But anyway, back to the crossing. When Manon's grandmother basically heckles her from the viewing platform, Abraxos looks up and growls.
And the fact that he can even understand the nuances of what's going on.
Well, considering how he reacted the last time they tried this, I'm glad that he is more confident and he's like...
He's fired up.
He's got her back this time. Manon notices the 13 all casually reaching for their weapons, like they're ready to fight their way out of here if they need to.
Which is huge. They are Iron Teeth witches first and 13 second.
Yeah. I mean, they're supposed to follow the High Witch. They follow Manon under the High Witch, but the High Witch is still, or not the High Witch. Well, yeah, High Witch.
Yeah.
The matron.
We just call her the high bitch.
Yeah.
The matron.
That's still who they follow above all. And
right.
Here they're choosing Manon because Manon's mount just threatened their High Witch. So, like, this could be it. If Manon's grandmother orders her to be put down,
they're ready.
Be.
And for witches born without hearts, they all seem to care about each other a lot. And Manon feels it too. I don't know if she recognizes it for what it is. I don't know if she like knows the words to describe love and friendship, but that's obviously what's going on.
I think they just put it all under the umbrella of loyalty or something.
Right.
Or honor. I don't know. Not honor. She tells Abraxos he only has to make this jump once and it'll shut them up forever. You are one of the 13. From now until the darkness cleaves us apart, you are mine and I am yours. Let's show them why.
I love this scene because the bait beasts down in the mountain are like starting a beat. And then it's not just the 13 and the black beaks, but the blue bloods. They follow their heir's lead. They're clapping and stomping their feet. And then Abraxos just takes the plunge.
She rises up in the saddle as he plummets down toward the ground with his wings tucked in tight, her hair coming free from her braid and streaming behind her.
Before they reach the stones, his spider silk patched wings send them soaring up the side of the Omega and into the sky.
Woo, love this for them. We switch from Manon to Rowan's POV in chapter 45 as he gives the sentries on the wall a jump scare when he shifts and lands beside them. He can scent their fear, something that never really bothered him before, but it does seem to bother him now.
He asks how long Selena has been practicing by herself, and they tell him that this morning it's been an hour, but it's the fourth morning in a row that she's been out there. The first three, Rowan assumed that she was in the kitchen, but then she started showing significant improvement in training, so he knew something was up, and he's followed her out here.
Selena is standing outside of the Wardstones, basically fighting with herself, not unlike that time that Kayal found her dancing with herself outside the ballroom.
She was like, I'll do it myself.
Fine. She's throwing daggers of flame at the barrier between the Wardstones. Then, as it bounces back to her, she's using her shield.
And I think this is the first time that Rowan sees her and doesn't see a girl, but he sees a warrior. He sees someone who could really make a difference.
Well, especially even like she gets knocked down and instead of like throwing a temper tantrum like a child, which is what he's expecting, she gets up and keeps going.
Right.
He's not the only one that's impressed. The sentries have never seen anyone fight like that. And Rowan doesn't think Maeve will be thrilled with the Demi-Fae learning to use their powers in new and creative ways.
And that's a red flag that she wants to keep them down.
Yes. Though he does plan on telling Lorcan about it for their own training.
And Lorcan is a name that we've heard before from Gavriel's visit to the tattoo shop. And he is the only male in Doranel who outranks Rowan.
Okay.
And he might have a connection to a little Akatar emo boy.
Okay. Rowan observes the evolution of Selena's skill, thanks at least in part to Arabin's training, but also the evolution of her flames, which are now various golds, reds, and oranges.
And it's, we've talked about this before. Arabin groomed and brutalized her, but he made her one hell of a fighter.
Yep.
And that's she's so good with weapons. That's why she's able to transition those skills into using her flames as weapons.
It's not even just the fighting, like all the dancing lessons, the different ways that he cultivated her. Her body can move in all kinds. Like she's very nimble. She knows her body. Right. She knows how to use it, how to move it.
The Abby Lee Miller of Assassins created Selena. They spend the next week training, only interrupted by unwelcome visit from Fae nobility traveling to Doranel. They focus on her fire, ignoring that drop of water magic, though when she's alone, she does try to summon it, but she's not actually successful. And the water magic, when she's trying to summon it in the bath, always makes me think of that scene in, is it
Discovery
Silver Flames?
Oh. Please continue.
Who is it that is using their water magic to make little like Pegasi in the water? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Everyone is screaming at me right now. I know. I'm sorry.
I'm not prepared for this question.
But also Discovery of Witches. Yes.
There's a major vibe shift in training. Rowan doesn't lighten up. He's still very tough on her, but it's not to be an asshole or try to get her to quit. It's to truly train her and to ready her until her shield is instinctual and until she's knocking him on his dumpy.
What a dumpy it is. But sometimes she still dreams of a not excessively handsome man back in Rithold. And those nights, she finds herself reaching across the bed only to realize it's not Kale, which it's like a happy surprise.
I know. I'm like, hello.
She says there's nothing romantic about sharing a bed with Rowan and they keep to their sides, but it's literally all I would think about. Like, I wouldn't get a wink of sleep because I'd just be like, Rowan, he's right there.
I mean, number one, you're trying to tell me he doesn't wake up with morning wood. We don't have an accidental poke. Like, come on. Nothing happens. Or even just like
accidental poke. Or in the morning when it twitches and you're like, not now.
Or even just like, are you sleeping in a tank top? Because you know eventually your boob will slip out. Like, you don't, there's not like an accident.
I
like,
refuse
moment.
to sleep in tank tops because I will wake up, my boob is out the side of it, and there is nothing less sexy than like a little side boob is okay, but a full side
the boob just out there on its own. When you're trying to tell me there's no, come on, there has to be a couple of moments where we're like, hey, maybe middle of the night we don't have a moment, maybe moment.
I refuse to believe.
Fine. When another demi-fae is murdered, they run like Edward and Bella to the corpse.
It's possible that thing that attacked Selena in the Barrows is not the only one. Like, they're just coming to that conclusion. And that's, it's something we've seen a lot in like horror movies or like true crime stuff where they're assuming at first that it's one person and they're like, wait a minute. That doesn't mean that the one that was responsible for the demi-fae over here, it doesn't mean they were responsible for the ones over here.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of Kale, by the way,
okay,
like it's kind of like when they teamed up to examine corpses
because he wasn't getting anywhere
in the glass castle
yes.
because Selena picks up on small details that others miss. Like this demi-fae has small cuts along the palms as if it were digging its fingernails in, and the clothing is torn and there's stuff up under its nails. It's just obvious something is different about this demi-fae. It fought back.
Or did the others and they just didn't notice because they were horrified? I don't know.
No, I think this is the first one because we find out why the fingernails in the palm, the pain.
Right. She borrows Rowan's dagger. She still doesn't have her own back and runs it under the male's cracked nails where she finds something black, not dirt, something blacker than night that smells like, I'm assuming it smells like sewers, like the catacombs beneath the library when she killed that creature.
And this sends her into a spiral. Like, think of how many cells back in Crown of Midnight, how many cells had been in that dungeon beneath the library. That thing she killed had a human heart, which she assumes, it was a defect. But then are there next gen creatures that were successful and then moved elsewhere? Like, are they here?
They went somewhere. She tells Rowan about the creature in the library, the word keys, which I'm like, didn't you guys have a couple weeks ago when you were just laying in bed?
No, it's because she was like, there will be time later for word keys.
I'm too anxious to give any time. Let me like word bomb on everything I know all at once.
I would have already, like every night I would be poking him in the back and I'd be like, Rowan, did I tell you about the word keys?
Do you know anything about this? Like anything? But she tells him about the word keys, the king targeting people with magic in their bloodlines, like Roland and Kaltain, and the information that she needs to save the world that Maeve is holding hostage.
She tells him probably a little too much, considering Maeve can force him to tell her everything, but he also probably needs some context. It's happened, I think, at least one time before. I don't know if we pointed it out, but there's a warm breeze that wraps around her as she starts to have a minty bee about thinking that the king's creatures are here in Windland.
Shit finally clicks. Roland and Kaltain had magic in their bloodlines, but obviously there's no magic in Otterland. But Demi-Fae have magic, and no one gives a shit about them. They're the perfect hosts.
Did you ever read The Host by Stephanie Meyer?
I did not.
It was not good.
That's probably why I didn't.
But there was a movie that was even worse.
I know.
It had the girl from Ladybird.
Yeah, Saoirse.
Yeah. I can't believe you know how to say that.
Thank you.
Well, using the demi-fae as host makes sense because what the demi-fae have magic, but then no one gives a shit if they go missing.
I mean, the local town doesn't even know who they are.
Exactly.
They're like, perfect.
But then you're wondering why there aren't more corpses popping up.
Or why are they popping up? Because you're going to be causing some alarm. Like, why are you not just, if you're testing, why are you not just hiding these?
Or
like,
getting rid of them.
People don't have to find them if you guys are trying to camp out and hide somewhere.
Right.
Maybe they just weren't compatible and waste not, want not. They couldn't use them, so they drained them.
So unlike the Boulder police, they search the area, but they find nothing. And for some reason, they come to the conclusion they need to sleep in a tree.
I know there are skinwalkers and whatever these things killing demi-fae are, but it's a little silly that they can still scent you.
Silly until Rowan takes his shirt off. We're just sitting up in a tree and you take your shirt off casually.
Let's be squished together when you do this,
And
though,
some
just for safety.
for safety and for scent reasons. For some feminine part of Selena, probably under her skirt, appreciates this. And she thinks she's seen it all because she smashed pissers with Kale.
One man.
But that was a man, and that was a lowercase m man, and this is a all caps male.
Just because you know what it should look like does not mean we're the same. But now we're thinking about Kale again,
Right.
wondering if those scars she gave him for failing to tell her about the threat on Nehemia's life have ever healed.
Or if Chaol sold information on her to the king, like maybe that's why this thing is in Wendland to hunt her. She almost forgets to even worry about baby girl because it's an afterthought of like, I wonder what's going on with Dorian.
Poor Dorian.
When
He's always an
nothing.
afterthought.
Rowan pouring water down his chest pulls her out of her head. Like, what are we doing? This is a thirst trap IRL.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
And she's like, thank God he saw me piss my panties and he's not interested. Otherwise, I might consider fucking Chaol out of my system.
Look, I'm not saying that's the right way to approach it, but
But
my
we
pride
read
would be
it.
like, how are you not looking at me right now?
I know, I'd be a little butthurt. But
Excuse
even
me.
she is still wearing her every kiss begins with Chaol ring. But
Yeah.
she's still considering fucking him out of her system.
She's going to have to make up her mind on that
and
one,
the fact
too.
that she's still so attached to that ring, I think might be what sparks an idea later on. Does that make
Oh.
sense?
Yes. I have follow-up questions on that, which
Okay.
I'm sure we'll get to. She's starting to understand Chaol was what she needed after losing Sam and surviving the mines.
He was there.
Well, she's also still pretending to be Selena and wasn't willing
Yes.
to accept who she was. So, of course, he was there to support her and get her through the grief.
Mhm.
It was what she needed to survive the glass castle.
As they sit in a fucking tree in the dark, tell me how they're sitting. I can't even logistically. I can't picture it.
Am I sitting on you? Am I
How
on
big
a
is
tree
this
branch
tree?
sliding into you? Like, what is happening?
Are we just knees to chest?
Am I just trying to balance?
Am I
My knees are
dangling?
dangling. Let's talk about my balance.
I know. I'm gonna sleep. I can't even sleep laying down on a regular surface without jerking awake. Selena asked Rowan about mates, specifically how you'd sooner harm yourself than ever causing your mate pain.
Pain, like when she'd raked her nails down Chaol's not exceedingly handsome face.
She actually tells Rowan about that, and she asks if Chaol had been her mate, would she have been able to do that? Obviously, Chaol is not your fucking mate. Be so for real right now. But Rowan points out that she had not been in her Fae form for 10 years, so maybe those instincts were buried. Like, he's not trying to kill that hope, because I don't know if he...
I think he can tell that she seems like she still wanted that to, I don't know. She seems like she doesn't want to hear that he wasn't. It's
yeah,
weird.
I don't totally know where she is mentally right now, but it's like the hope that Tamlin was holding on to. Mates can be together intimately before the actual bond snaps into place. So it's a possibility, and I don't think he wants to kill that in case it's still
But
a
again,
hope or dream.
she
but
had every intention of actually killing him. Like,
Yeah.
if that had really been your mate, I don't think you would have allowed yourself to do that.
and I think that he knows that.
I think that she knows it too. She's
Yeah.
just not ready to fully separate herself. When he asks if she wants the truth, she says, not tonight. Yep. And goes to sleep in a tree.
In a tree. But yeah, I can't tell if this is her hoping that Chaol is her mate or is not her mate.
Maybe it's because she wanted it so bad for a minute that she's not ready to just like give up all the things that she had wanted.
Well, are there cases in this series of mortals being mated to Fae? Is that even a thing?
I don't know off the top of my head. Maybe in Terracin at one point, because clearly there's
There's
I mean,
demi-fae.
like-
There had, yeah.
also, wouldn't that have been Elena and Gavin? Weren't they mates and he was mortal?
Yeah, you're right. I think so.
So I'm sure they're in there. There's just, we haven't heard a lot about it because a lot of them are dead.
Yeah.
The next day, they continue their search on cliffs overlooking the beach after Selena finds a drop of dark blood on a rock and Rowan follows the scent. They find a crumbled, hidden staircase leading down to the beach and ocean where there's a small break in that barrier that's always kept Wendland safe.
And you know what I'm picturing for these cliffs? When we saw the cliffs in Ireland,
Uh-huh.
is that what you mentally? That's what I've been picturing. For the cliffs.
I wasn't imagining them quite that steep since they're able to kind of like walk down.
Yeah.
But still, something very sharp and like you wouldn't immediately think to like try to go down them.
And there's that small break you can't fit warships or anything big through, but it's the perfect place to sneak into Windland undetected. You just have to do it like a little bit at a time.
Well, and they have no defenses on this side of the continent. Like, that
No,
makes sense. And it fits the MO of bodies being dumped near the sea, but not in the sea. Bodies start washing up on the beach, and people are going to start looking at the beach.
which has countless caves along the shore. Plus, that deadliest catch extra found weapons in his nets. So Selena braces to fight Rowan on making her return to Mistward. But unlike other men or males in her life, he isn't going to leave her out of shit to try to protect her or because he doesn't trust her. Like, she's getting ready to fight to help and to stay. But he's like, yeah, of course you are.
Like, that's a whole, like, she's like, Really?
Yeah.
What? Thank you." Using a storm to cover their movements, they search the caves that night and find it wasn't just monsters the King of Adoran has been sneaking in. It's an entire army of soldiers.
And I'm a little surprised that she's surprised the king didn't have a plan for the chaos that she is supposed to start by killing the royal family.
I
Like the
mean,
plan was always for her to cause chaos. Didn't you think that he was planning something to take
maybe it's
advantage of it?
because it's a different continent. She didn't think he would be as interested in Winland. But, like,
He's
you've talked
interested
about
in
how
everywhere.
evil this guy is, and he's always trying to expand. So, like, you got to be open to any of these things. To get a closer look, Rowan shifts into his hawk and nonchalantly flies into the cave.
I don't think if I were in this world, I would trust any animals anywhere. Like my dog would not be watching me shit or shower. Like no animal is allowed.
I mean, they have effing shapeshifters. Like, yeah,
No,
I don't
thank
know
you.
who you are. He returns with intel. There are about 200 regular ass but highly trained human soldiers and 3 creatures in the network of caves along the shore. They're under the command of General Narok.
The same General Murtaugh asked Adian if he knew, the one who took over the Dead Islands, and while he was there were rumors of monsters on the island.
So now we know where he went when he left Skulls Bay. Selena starts to wonder if Kaal really did tell the king who she was, but that doesn't make sense timeline wise. It would have taken weeks or months to get the creatures and soldiers smuggled in. This is very Game of Thrones.
It
Like, they
is.
make plans, and he's like, "Girl, I already made these plans." This
Mhm.
has been in the works for a while.
And there's more bad news. Even if they send word to Varese now, it would take a week for their forces to get there. And they're not the ones in immediate danger. Like they aren't actually the target. The soldiers landed on this coastline because there is an access point, a mountain road that will take them right to Mistward.
Which makes sense. They've been experimenting on Demi-Fae, and where can you find all-you-can-eat Demi-Fae buffet?
Well, not only that, but if they're going to conquer Windland, like if that's the ultimate goal, the Demi-Fae are the biggest threat. Like the Fae are the biggest threat, but Maeve doesn't give a shit about helping others. But the Demi-Fae might, like they might help Windland.
Yeah, pick them off when they're not prepared. They're not
Right.
thinking about it. Selena starts to march down there and unleash her magic, but they have word marks protecting their camp from magic.
And they have iron fits and weapons because the king is a lot of things, but a stupid bitch is not one of them. He has clearly been planning this for a long time.
But also, if they have 3 of those creatures and she was defeated by one in the Barrow Whites, I'm like, wait, the Barrow Field? I'm like, wait, how are you going to suddenly go down there and kill 3 of them?
Right.
Like, wait a minute. Come on.
I think
Rowan,
she wants to. Sorry, I just
oh, no, you're
interrupted.
good. I
But
mean,
she's very martyr, and I could see her being like, even if it kills me, everything is even if it kills me.
well, and she wants to protect, and I appreciate that she is willing to die if she has to, but that doesn't mean this is the best use of your power and your time.
Right.
Rowan reluctantly tells Selena that they have a Demi-Fae female in the caves right now. That's where they've been experimenting. Rowan obviously couldn't save her or he'd give himself away, so he tried cutting off her air to make it a quick death.
That's a brutal. I mean, I know it would be quicker, but that would be a brutal death too.
But even then, they have her in too much iron for his magic to even work. What they're doing to her is what that thing did to Selena in the Barrows, trapping her in her mind, feeding on
That
her.
is so terrifying. But to recap, they cannot kill them with their magic while they're in the caves because of the word marks. Wendland's forces are too far away to help, and they are inevitably going to march on Mistward, where maybe 30 centuries have actually seen battle. Like, we're fucked.
Yeah, all of that to be said, like, Selena's been training. I can't remember. She's still Selena. Yeah, Selena's, I keep wanting to call her Aelin. Selena has been training
Mhm.
and she can do a lot with her magic, but like, you can't defeat 200 and the creatures. Like, I
Without your
appreciate
magic.
it's, well, even with your magic, like, it's too soon.
Yeah.
Like, you're still training. As they walk deeper into the forest, they scent but can't see one of the creatures. Rowan wants them to split up Scooby-Doo style,
Never
and
split up. That's like the worst thing you could do in a horror
it
movie.
works out this time, but I hear what you're saying. When he gives the signal, attack from both sides.
They have another one of those wordless convos that they seem to be having more and more of too, if you notice.
Yeah, I'm like, you guys don't think that's unusual?
I
Okay.
look at people all the time and they have no fucking clue what I'm like. I can't communicate like that.
The creature appears much closer to Selena than she'd anticipated, blackness surrounding him like a cloak.
Which is very Reese coded. I'm so sorry to tell everyone.
Yeah, well, the blackness, yeah. Well, he's also very attractive with pale skin and sensual lips.
Raw. Next question.
Selena's head is pounding and her nose bleeding as this thing starts walking in her direction.
I would be scared, but he's also really sexy. So I'd be like, I'd be fixing my hair like, oh no.
I'm like, when do I throw out the fire? Like, I'm waiting for the signal. She has a panic thought though, like maybe it got to Rowan first. So she glances around a tree and finds the creature is gone.
She looks at her blade and in its reflection sees it standing behind her. Very horror movie.
Yes.
She pivots, ready to stab the fuck out of it, but as soon as she looks into its black eyes, she's donezo. Everything freezes. Her mind, her body, her soul, her magic goes out. She hears herself drop her sword as she takes in his perfect face, the wordstone choker around his throat.
He doesn't say, "There you are, I've been looking for you."
He has an abbreviated version of it, just you.
His icy fingers tilt her face to stare into her eyes.
And I fear this would work on me.
Especially since he's so beautiful.
I know.
There's a sudden windstorm, but she still finds herself slipping into the darkness, welcoming it, until someone pierces the veil and Rowan is ripping her away. She's still under its hold, fighting Rowan, so he does something he said he'd never do again. He bites the spot between her neck and shoulder, using the pain to wake her the fuck up.
Pain, just like that last demi-fae who managed to fight back. The one who had cut his palm with his fingernails, that was him grounding himself in reality. They don't really have any options but to run, so Selena throws up a wall of flame, and they are runners, they are track stars. They take off, but so they don't really get to see how it reacts to the flame.
They don't have time to process or analyze it right now, but the creature hisses at the flame.
It buys them some time to run, but then the thing is crashing through the woods like the smoke monster in Lost, the darkness spreading out around it.
They aren't the only track stars. This thing is knees to chest, but they do have the advantage of knowing the area.
I would be so done. You would catch me so quick.
At least you run more often than I do. I'd be like, hold on.
Just kill me.
Instead of running to Mistward, which would lead it right to that demi-fae buffet, they run into the Cambrian Mountains.
And realizing it's not going to stop, Selena has a plan, and that is something we will see a lot in the series. While Rowan leads the creature another way using her tunic, so is she just boobs out running right now? Whatever, doesn't matter. She lights a torch beside a forgotten road and hums a song from a symphony, one she used to see every year. And I'm assuming it's the one that last year before her enslavement that Arabin was being petty and he took Lysandra to. That was like her
Yeah,
yearly.
because she referenced that was like her yearly like happy place in the fall. Her fire attracts 5 skinwalkers, just as she'd planned. And just to really get them motivated, she talks about the 4 she killed before waving the torch and taking off. She sprints down the road to where she told Rowan to lead the creature.
Rowan's wind shoves Selena's scent towards the road the skinwalkers are chasing her on. They climb into a tree because they love hanging out in trees. Rowan putting his arms around Selena for scent reasons. And a minute later, the screaming starts. You assume when we jump to Mistward in the next chapter that the creature was cooked, right? Like, because 5 of these nightmares against 1, and Selena assumes it was killed, even though she can't find a body, and that's like horror 101 when you can't find a body. But she goes forward assuming that it's dead.
It's the sounds that were made, and it sounds like the other creatures were cheering at their success. So they went with it. You're right, without seeing the actual body. But also, you're trying to tell me she's shirtless. Is he shirtless? And we're just hanging out in this tree,
shirtless in
cuddled
the tree?
up all night. Like, I don't care if she got a little boot, like a band around her boobs. Like, that's not gonna come on.
I know, and
we're skin to skin, right?
If I'm running with a band and there aren't straps, it's rolling down.
There's no way things are staying in place. That's another problem.
I'm tits out. I'm just sitting here with barbecue sauce on my titties. I love that. If you know what I'm talking about, you were on Vine.
That is
classic
so long
Vine.
ago. That's funny. At Mistward, Malachi immediately sends messengers to Wendland's king begging for help.
The fact that the first thought is begging Wendland and not May. Like first of all, the fact that they have to beg anyone to help but they don't even go to Maeve because they know she's not going to
I
help.
mean, that says so much.
Right.
Messengers
Which
return.
seems really fast.
Yep.
Like, I guess they sent people with animal forms. Like, you're telling me the whole thing is that Wendellin's forces are not going to get here in time, but within like less than, I mean, it's the same page
Yeah.
that someone goes there and back. So I don't know. The king promises as many men as can be spared, which is great, even if one, them being too late, no matter how fast they come, is a very real possibility. And two, Selena's family on her mother's side showing up is its own complication. Because just a reminder, Selena's mother, Evelyn, was the sister of the king of Wendlin, Glaston, Ash River.
Rowan takes over Mistward with no pushback, only gratitude from the others.
They're probably surprised that he gives a shit.
But that, and he
But
has
they're
so
like,
much more experience than
yes,
anybody. So
tell
like,
us what to do.
please. The Demi-Fae are at a major disadvantage, but they're going to home alone this shit using their knowledge of the terrain, its venomous creatures, and holes filled with spikes and snares.
None of which is going to defeat an army, but it should at least slow them down. And the whole thing right now is just slowing them down so that forces have time to get there. But the snakes thing is similar to, I went to Machu Picchu once, so now it's my entire personality. But when the Incans were conquered, they destroyed all the roads to Machu Picchu and they released a bunch of poisonous snakes. But they also stopped talking about it, and it worked so well that people forgot about it eventually. And that's why it sat there undiscovered for so long. I mean, that's what our tour guide said. So they didn't want the Spaniards to know about Machu Picchu, so they just didn't talk about it for generations, and then people just actually forgot about it.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
And
too.
I don't
It's
know.
wild.
I haven't actually looked at it to see if it's true, but our tour guide said that, and he was wearing a lanyard, so I believe whatever you say if you're wearing like a badge.
Their failsafe is a secret tunnel leading out of the fortress, so ancient that even most residents don't know about it. But according to Bast and the scouting team, who are allegedly watching the caves, they have a few days until the soldiers and creatures are on the move.
And I highlighted where during a meeting, Selena is standing beside Rowan. Obviously, he's in charge, but that seems significant.
Yeah, he's got her right there by his side,
Mhm.
trusting her. They also work really well together, surprisingly well considering how this relationship started. No one will ever replace Nehemia.
What do you, were they that close? I'm sorry. That is shitty to say.
I know. It's like you read this the first time through, and then as we keep going through it, I'm like, I don't know that I understand the depth of this connection she has, but she trusted Nehemia too much.
Mm-hmm.
So no, in her mind, nobody's ever going to replace Nehemia or make Selena's trauma disappear, but Rowan does make her feel better.
Just in time for them all to die.
Yay.
But you know who would be a huge help would be Rowan's circle jerk. Why don't we send an invite to the group chat?
Selena assumes he hasn't sent word and he doesn't correct her. But when she asks if Maeve would order him back to Dornell out of spite, Rowan thinks that's exactly what she'd do for a few reasons.
And Selena can't help herself. She's like, and that's the bitch that you chose to serve. I wouldn't be able to help myself either.
I mean, I know Rowan kind of got himself stuck there. Like once he may not have known enough and then he was stuck with the decision he made, but I get it. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. Even though Rowan says he knew exactly what he was doing when he took the blood oath.
When he was at the lowest point in his life.
Yeah, he didn't care enough about anything then, I guess. He seems to be bothered by not Selena's judgment, but seeing himself through her eyes.
And it's like when it bothered him when the sentries feared him. Demi-Fae fearing Rowan is nothing new. Him serving Maeve is nothing new. But him giving a shit what people, or more specifically, what one person thinks, that is new.
She tells Rowan that for what it's worth, all of this, everything he's doing for the Demi-Fae proves that Maeve doesn't deserve him.
Which, of course, he plays that off and think, you know, like, your opinion doesn't matter to me. But it's getting more and more obvious that it does. And Selena doesn't say everything she wants to, like how she wishes she could take him back to Otterlin, like take him back to Terrasen. And as far as they know, there's no way to break his oath to Maeve. But even if they could, why would he go with this crownless thought? You know, like, what does she have to offer him? But it doesn't keep her from wishing she could keep him. Like Casper when he turned into my childhood crush and asked, "Can I keep you?"
Oh, I love that movie. The next afternoon, a ripple of silence cuts through the forest.
That would be exactly when I farted, because that happened to me one time at Hollister. Do you remember?
The music changes over.
Remember how loud the music? It was like you couldn't see, and it was so disorienting in that store. And then it just like cut, I guess, to go to the next song, and you just You just heard "Brr."
At least it's dark enough in the store you could hide behind something. They used to, like, never have the lights on, I guess, so you couldn't tell how shitty the clothes
It was
were.
like
I
you
don't
were
know.
walking around blind and you couldn't hear anything, and you were like, where are the low-rise jeans?"
So much. Selena is panicking, thinking maybe Maeve is here to put Rowan back on his leash. But when she goes to the kitchen, it's not Maeve she finds, but Rowan, Imris, Malachi, and Luca. Rowan tells Selena there was an uprising at the Calicola labor camp.
One we actually read a very brief POV from in Crown of Midnight, a girl who had just learned of Nehemiah's death. It's not directly said, but you can connect the dots that that was the very girl who started this uprising by killing her overseer. When the slaves seized the camp, the king sent soldiers, and he didn't just kill a few that were like in charge or anything. He killed all of them.
Yeah, he didn't just like put the ones down that were fighting. He put down everybody.
Mhm.
There were thousands of slaves in Calicola, but the king didn't stop there. He also had all of the slaves in Endovir killed.
And this is devastating no matter who you are, what side you're on. But Rowan knew that Selena had always planned to one day return and free the slaves, the ones that she feels like she left behind. People from Eelway, which she promised Nehemia that she would free. People from Terrasen, the people who fought for her own kingdom when she didn't.
And there were children in the camps.
Overwhelmed by grief and guilt, Selena walks outside and unleashes her magic on the barrier surrounding the fortress, feeding the invisible stones her power. And the stones seem to
Absorb it.
absorb and soak it up.
They're like, thank you. Back in Otterland, Kael, Dorian, and Adian learn what happened at Calicola and Endovir when the king announces it at a state luncheon, his biggest concern being replenishing the mines with slaves.
Dorian is, of course, horrified. Kael is shocked, and Adian has to slip his mask back on and thank the king, who says that since the quote unquote purge, the rebels in Adian and the Banes areas have ceased their antics.
Yeah, I'm sure. Dorian bursts into Sorsha's workroom and tells her he wants her out of the castle, away from his father, but she's not leaving him. Who would be there for Dorian? Like, okay, you guys are both having a real honest moment. Like, you're right,
Yes.
Dorian. Force her out.
And in that moment, Dorian finally understands what Kael did for Selena, like basically selling himself to his father to get her out of Windland because he's thinking he would do anything for Sorsha.
As much as Dorian would love to get away from his father, if he were to run with her, that would leave the tiny terrorist Holland as heir. So
God.
she tells him they'll face it together.
While
No,
Dorian,
Dorian.
I
No.
know, it's, he needed someone. Dorian needed someone that put him as their
He
priority,
needed
which,
somebody truly in his corner.
yes, he needed like a ride or die, and she was. And while Dorian ran to Sorsha, Kael ran to the tomb, but he's not alone.
Adian asks Kael what he thinks the people on other continents think of them. Do they pity or hate us?
And it's interesting to go from a POV in Windland, seeing them reacting to what happened, then here in Adian asking, I wonder what other people think of us. Adian has had a full decade of pretending with the king, but what he just did when he had to thank the king for killing his own people, he considers that the worst. Kale doesn't know what to say, so he just walks out.
Like you were saying with the POVs, it's also interesting that this happened right after Adian got under Kael's skin about picking a side and standing for something.
Exactly. And I know that everyone is processing it differently, but I really hate that in this moment someone that Adian is talking to just walks away when he's, I mean, I know that Kale, they don't know how to be there for each other, but
Well, and there's
it's very
nothing
sad.
that Kael can offer without like picking a side.
Right.
Also, like anything that Kael says at this point, it kind of bounces off because it's like, well, you're still working for him.
Yeah.
You're still choosing him.
And the mood is somber at the Royal Theater in Rifthold that night, the one that we saw Selena visit several times in Assassin's Blade. This is a place that she loves.
Somber in the upper tiers. The nobility and merchants, however, are mostly concerned about the pause in labor without slaves to work the mines.
They're concerned about what it's going to mean for them financially, not the loss of thousands of lives.
I mean, like, I don't know how cold you have to be that you don't even recognize that innocents and children were there. Like,
Right.
that's insane. The musicians take the stage dressed in black. The conductor raises his arms, and it's not a symphony that they play. It's the song of Eelway, Fenharrow, Melisande, Terrasen, each kingdom whose people were in the labor camps.
They play the song of Otterland last, not in triumph, but to mourn what the kingdom has become Then they look to the boxes, and without a word or a bow, they walk off stage.
That, like I actually teared up reading this because I was like, "It's just
Yes.
sad." Also, they're all gonna die. The next morning, by royal decree, the theater is shut down and no one ever sees the musicians or their conductor again.
This might be one of the most impactful moments from the series for me. Like every time I read it, I have to sit with it for a while. I love Akatar, I love Crescent City and other series, but I don't know if any series has made me as emotional as Throne of Glass or made me think as much as Throne of Glass.
Mhm.
We don't get outside POVs much in the series. So when we do, it's important because this is like Dorian's not there, Chaol, Adian, Selena, but we're hearing about what happened because it's important. Like the girl in the labor camp hearing about Nehemiah's murder, this orchestra scene, it serves a couple of purposes. It's the death of yet another thing that Selena loves. It's a callback to how much she loved visiting the theater in Assassin's Blade, how important music is to her. Like we just learned that with her flames at Mistward. Like when she's humming and when she's saving Luca, or Dorian finds her playing the piano, it also shows not everyone in Otterland is okay with what's going on because we haven't gotten those outside POVs. We've been in the glass castle bubble, so it's important to see that it's not just these handfuls of people that are not okay with what's going on.
It is nice to see kind of like, a perspective of the masses.
Right.
Those are like the average and lower classes, not the ones with the wealth, but there's a lot of distrust, and you can see a real distinction in the scene in a lot
Mhm.
of ways. You don't have to be a royal or a long lost queen or to have magic to be a rebel. Like when Raina Goldsmith sang at the castle, everyday people are capable of being brave.
And we do hear more about this, specifically the conductor in, I believe, Queen of Shadows.
We'll
But
pick up
this is a depressing way to end, but
I know. It is, but it also is such an important scene that it almost feels like it makes sense to, like,
to
end with
end, because
it.
I don't know if I can just, like, move forward and make jokes.
We'll pick up next week with the attack on Mistward and a flashback to the King of Otterland's visit to Terrasen in chapters 50 to 58.
We're gonna go cry now, so happy Christmas, Harry.
Happy Christmas, Ron!